Hello, and welcome to the Wayfaring Panda. I'm Annette. Today I'm participating in the Handmade Happiness YouTube hop put on by Allison from Allison K Creations. I'm making some treat pouches with my Newton Nook stamps that I recently purchased. First of all, I cut out some hearts from Bristol Smooth cardstock. And I used my Lawn Fawn Fancy Scallop die for this. And now I'm doing some ink blending. So for this first one, I'm using Peacock feathers. I think Newton's Nook has some heart dies that go with their stamps, but I'm using what I had. For the next heart, I'm using Worn Lipstick Distress Ink. The theme of the hop is Celebrate May Day, which was traditionally celebrated on May 1st. And people would leave baskets of flowers and candy on people's porches. So I thought the pouch I can make with some spring images and put some candy in the pouch. Next, I'm going to emboss my sentiments. And so I'm going over a square paper that I cut out with a Lawn Fawn die with my embossing buddy, so that my embossing powder won't stick anywhere other than where I stamp. And for my first image, I'm going to use Peacock feathers. And I'm going to do a tone-on-tone effect with all three of my pouches that I'm making. Then I'm using clear embossing powder over my sentiment. I'm doing the same thing for this sentiment, but I'm using Worn Lipstick. And I also cut out a rectangle for this sentiment because this sentiment wouldn't fit on this square. And then I just trimmed the edges with a corner rounder. For my third sentiment, I'm going to be using VersaMark ink and use purple embossing powder. I want to apologize for any noise that you hear. The neighbors are mowing the lawn and I don't have time to wait for later to do the voiceover. Now with the color embossing powder, I did have trouble with it sticking, so I don't know if it helped to use the embossing buddy more or what, but that's what I like, the clear embossing powder, because you can't see when it shows up in the wrong places. Next I'm going to heat emboss my hearts with my butterfly stamp. So first of all, I'm going over it with my embossing buddy, so hopefully the powder doesn't stick where I don't want it to. So this one I'm using a white heart, and I'll do the ink blending later, so it'll be an emboss resist technique. I'm using my Tim Holtz stamping platform to stamp the heart image. Now in this case, I didn't get great coverage, and I don't know if that's because of the magnets, so I did remove one of them. However, I didn't have a clear acrylic block big enough for the stamped image, so I had to use my stamping platform. So you'll notice there's one spot here where the embossing powder doesn't stick, but I decided it'd be okay because I need to put the sentiment there anyway. You'll see me using colored embossing powder, but if you don't have colored embossing powder, you could stamp with colored distress ink and then use clear embossing powder, like I did with the sentiments. For the teal heart, I'm going to emboss with my VersaMark ink, and I'm using a colored embossing powder from Ranger, and it's called Aqua Tinsel. It kind of has a grit to it, and it's a little bit like glitter. I discovered the last time that I used this that you couldn't really do emboss resist because then the glitter kind of rubbed off when you did the put the ink on. So that's why I did my ink blending first, and now I'm doing my embossing. I really liked the way that this created a tone-on-tone effect, and the glittery look made the butterfly stand out so that you could see it. For the pink heart, I'm doing the same thing, except I'm using a pink embossing powder from Ranger called Pink Tinsel. And this is the same thing. It has a shiny look to it with grit, so it didn't really work well with ink blending and doing emboss resist. So you want to do your ink blending first and then emboss your image. I hope this shows you could create several different looks just by changing up the embossing powder or the ink that you're using. And you can do it either way. If you have colored embossing powder, you can use that with your VersaMark ink or any clear wet ink, or you can use a colored dye like Distress ink with clear embossing powder. For my purple butterflies, I'm doing the emboss resist technique, and that's where you do your embossing first and then go over it with your ink blending. And you can do this with any smooth embossing powder. So embossing powder that has glitter on it, you would want to put on top. I'll put a list of all the supplies that I'm using in the description below. Some of these will be affiliate links. They don't cost you anything extra to use, but I do get a small percentage of any sale that is generated, and this helps support my website. Off camera, I ink blended matching hearts so that the back would be colored the same as the front, but no butterflies. And now I'm just getting glue on part of the heart, and I'm leaving the top of the heart without glue, so that when I stick it together, and after it dries, there'll be an opening to put a treat. Next, I'm going to stamp my images from Newton's Nook, and this is from their stamp set, Captivated Kittens. So I'm stamping each of the 3 kittens that come with the set, and I'm using Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink because it's alcohol marker friendly. And I'm also using Heavenly White paper, which is also alcohol ink friendly, or you can use any other alcohol ink friendly paper. I'm not an expert with Copic coloring. I'm pretty new to it. I'm not an artist either, but I'm just putting this in to show what you can do, even if you're not really great at it. And besides, the more you do, the better you get at it. So you'll see I'm starting with an RV color, and I'll put the colors that I'm using below, and I'll try to put the marker lids on the camera so that you can see what it is. So the small images like the ears and the dragonfly, I'm just doing in one color. I've heard people have trouble with the red bleeding, and you can see that the red-violet color that I used on the toes did bleed. Now part of it is these are Copic sketch, and they do have a brush nib. They also have a chisel tip, which I never used, so I did buy some extra bullet nibs, and I'll be replacing those with the ones I'm thinking I'll do with this one, because I usually use small areas with the RV colors. For the kittens, I'll be doing more shading since it's a larger area. So I start with my darker color first, and then I work down to a lighter color. So first of all, I try to put the darker color where I think there'll be shadows. So the parts that'll be on the bottom or underneath part of his body, or where they have an elbow, those wouldn't get as much sunshine and there would be more shade. So this one I'm trying to make like a light gray or maybe a white, but you can't color white, so then you just do the outline gray to give it kind of a white effect. Of course, I sped up the coloring so that you wouldn't be here forever watching me color. On this cat, I'm trying to do stripes, and it was my first attempt at stripes. I don't think it turned out great. But like I said, it's my first time doing it, and you get better as you practice more. I'm also thinking if I put a bullet nib on this particular brush, I think a bullet nib would be easier to do the stripes. I'm doing a little bit darker on this kitty because I want him to be more of a darker gray with black stripes. And also I'm trying to do his foot a little bit darker gray, so it kind of covers up the pink that bled on the paw. Now this is the part where I had trouble telling if that was part of his neck or part of the net. So I couldn't decide if he was a skinny neck or a chubby neck. I think actually I made his neck too big and part of it was supposed to be the net. But however you color it, whoever you're giving it to, well, just believe that's part of the cat. I'm going to put some music on for you to listen to while you watch me color. And I don't show the third kitty, I'm just going to show the flower because I didn't do the kitty too much different than the first one, except that I made it a darker gray. Also, my battery ran out on the camera, so I couldn't film all of that, and I didn't think you'd want to watch me color 3 kittens. I've been taking some classes from Kitten Clouder, and I've only taken a couple. And she recommends that you do the dark color first, which works for me because then I figure out the shadows first before doing the rest of the coloring. And she says you use less ink doing that way, but some people prefer to do lightest to darkest. But whatever works for you, you can do it that way. I glued all my images and sentiments to the heart. So on this one, I used the one with the pink flower, put the butterfly one on the teal heart, and the dragonfly one on the purple heart. Now the pouches are ready for a treat. So I purchased some Ghirardelli candy bars to stick inside my treat pouches. And you can either put it long ways or short ways. I want to thank you for watching the video, and thank you for all those of you who are subscribed to my channel. If you like the video, please give it a like, and if you're not already subscribed, I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe to my channel. Also, please look in the description below for the next person on the hop. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.